get started. So we've been talking about cleaning different household items, and yesterday we talked about folding clothing. Now we're going to talk about something else, which is hanging clothing up to dry. So the truth is, many of us in the year 2020 don't hang clothing out to dry as used to be. I remember in my life certainly seeing long clotheslines in the backyard with lots of clothing on the outside. Today, it's pretty common that either in our own homes or by going to a laundromat or dry cleaners or something like that, we tend to have our clothes cleaned by machine. But even today, there's still plenty of times where people hang clothing, in fact, to dry. In fact, lots of times people do it in their homes. I've seen a number of situations, including my own, where a mini kind of clothesline is set up in a person's laundry room or somewhere else in the house, where either they take a string and string it across the room, or they just have a rack and they put things on hangers and let things dry. All of those would be applicable to what we're going to talk about today, which is, are we allowed to take clothing that's been washed and hang it on a clothesline or some other rack in order to dry it out? That's going to be the basic question that we're going to talk about. So just getting into it, he says as follows. Asur litlot kevasim retuvim ala chevel b'Shabbat k'dei liyavesham. Shemeh yachsheduhu shekevesan b'Shabbat v'asur l'shodchan afilu b'chadrei chadarim shekol davar she'asru chachamim mipnei marit ha'ayin asur afilu b'chadrei chadarim. So he says the following thing, and he says the major issue that we have here is what we call marit ha'ayin. He says if someone were to hang out clothing on Shabbat, if you were to take clothing and put it on a clothesline or something along those lines on Shabbat, so what would be the problem? The problem would be not that you did something that's inappropriate, because there's really no melacha involved in hanging something and leaving it out to dry. There's nothing wrong with that per se. However, the concern was that people saw you taking your wet items and putting them on a clothesline. You'd basically be telling them, you just finished washing clothing on Shabbat, and that's allowed. We don't want, right? So therefore, the halacha is that you can't take wet clothing and string it up along the clothesline or on a rack in order to have it to dry, even though that in itself presents no problem for halacha. What it invites people to think that the almost necessary immediate step which you would have taken beforehand is not allowed, and that is washing clothing. So we don't want people to wash clothing on Shabbat that we don't even let you hang clothing. That in and of itself is not a problem. He says, and this is true. He says, this is true not only on a clothesline in my backyard. He says, this is also true in my home. And as we said before, many times people will hang things inside, not only outside. It's not as effective inside, but it works. And sometimes people will do that. He says, you can't do that either on Shabbat because we have people to see. And that is, if we'll call it a rule of Marit Ha'ayin, if we're concerned that people might see it, not only do we not do it in places where people might see it, but we also don't do it inside. Even though we'll say no one will see it or anyone will see it, we'll understand. We don't make that differentiation in the law. Once it's the law outside, it's the law inside, that's the law. And so therefore, hanging things in my laundry room would not be okay. So for example, if I ran a load of wash, a couple of hours before Shabbat started, right? And then I didn't get back to the laundry room until after Shabbat started, maybe the next morning, and all the stuff in there is wet. So what might I want to do? Just take it out and hang it up. I can't do that. I have to leave it there. I can't hang things on Shabbat. He says, and the sin is to have it for you to actually go and hang it on Shabbat. Aval, but he said if you hung it right before Shabbat, right? In other words, let's say right before you went to Shul on Mincha on Friday afternoon, so you hung the items up, you don't have to take it down before Shabbat starts, because you might have thought that what? You might have thought that, oh, you're not allowed to have it hanging. Because if I had it hanging, someone will say, oh, you see, you did the work on Shabbat. No. That you don't have to do. The only thing we're concerned about is that hanging something on Shabbat. But if you hung it from before Shabbat, you do not have to take it out before Shabbat. We're not concerned to that level that people will look and say that you
look into our
videos.
We got to get.
Feel free to join in if you need to, but there's some background noise. Okay, so that's the basic rule that we're going to talk about today. Now we're going to talk about a lot of varieties around that rule. Okay, so first of all, the next halacha is, what if I did already, right? What if I didn't know the halacha and I hear on Shabbat, oh, you're not allowed to do that, or I forgot and then I remembered, or something like that. It says, "Im avar v'tala begadim b'Shabbat b'isur en mechayvin oto loridam mehachevel." We don't require you to take it down, right? Whereas sometimes there are rules which there are halachot where if you're doing something wrong and now you realize that it's wrong, you have to remove it or stop it or so on and so forth. Here, that's not the case. If I mistakenly, either on purpose or not realizing, hung something on Shabbat, I am not required to take it down. The damage is done, and so therefore there's no requirement any further to take it down. Okay, next one. Baggage. Now the next case is a similar case, but different, as we're going to see. And this is a very common case. We've actually talked about it a little bit in the past couple of days. Baggage shenirtav mimayim mezea afilu lak. Actually, not this one. Hold on one second. Baggage shenirtav mimayim or mezea afilu lak nirtav b'miktzat. He says, let's say you have an article of clothing, your pants, a shirt, or something like that, and it got wet either because something spilled on it, or sweating, or something like that. Even if it's only a little bit wet, you're not allowed to hang it or stretch it out in a way that shows that the purpose of what you're doing is to dry it. It says, so you can't put it on a clothesline, for example. He says, however, you can do so in a way that doesn't look like you're drying it. So you could take it and put it on a chair, right? In a way that it doesn't you can't tell, right? If I take it, put it on the back of a chair, or maybe on the doorknob or something like that, which is something you might do even without drying it. So if that's something, so if the way that you take the action doesn't show that you're intending to dry it, then that's okay. Except but it can't be next to something that's going to expedite the drying by it being very quick. So for example, I can't leave it over a radiator. The radiator gets really hot, and now you'd be running into a different area. That area would be bishul, cooking, because you'd be heating up the object, either the clothing or the water in the clothing, and that, which we'll get to at a different time, the laws of cooking, that is a serious issue. So you can't take something and put it in a place where a fire, so it can't be next to the stove, next to the radiator, or I'm trying to think what else might have that level of heat. If there's some kind of lamp that gives off heat, a space heater or something along those lines, you can't leave it in that place. So you can leave it, as we said, on the back of a chair, on a doorknob, even on a hook, that you use to hang. If you have a hook to hang children's knapsacks or clothing for storage, that's no problem to leave it hanging there. But to put it on a clothesline or in a place where you normally leave clothes hanging, so that you're not allowed to do. Hanging to dry, I meant. Okay. Now, look at the next halacha. Mutar b'Shabbat l'tlot l'shtach mi'il geshem ratuv kedei liyavasho. He says there's no problem hanging a raincoat to dry. Why? If you hang a raincoat, even if you were to put it on a clothesline, no one thinks that you just washed the raincoat. Right? Everyone knows if you put a raincoat out to dry, you did so because the raincoat was wet, not that you cleaned it. So therefore, there's really no concern when it comes to a raincoat about hanging it out to dry, except as we said, you can't put it over a radiator or somewhere else where the heat is going to warm up the raincoat or the water that's on the raincoat. So raincoats are okay. So next thing that he talks about is diaper cloths. Now, I've never seen this in my own life, but most of us use the disposable diapers for the children for lots of obvious reasons. But in the olden days, they also used diaper cloths for this purpose. They still use diaper cloths for the child spitting up. If you're nursing the baby or giving the baby formula and things like that, you tend to put the diaper cloth on you or whatever. And a diaper cloth, he says you're allowed to hang it so that it dries because people know you're using it that day. And as long as you're not cleaning it, it's okay. He tells you that you can hang the diaper cloth up. And he says the same thing is true about hand towels and handkerchiefs and so on and so forth. These quick use items, things that we use over and over again, you're allowed. So therefore, things like, now let's talk about the classic question, which is the hand towels in the kitchen or in the bathrooms or something like that. So for sure, to put it on the rack in the bathroom or in the kitchen is no problem because no one thinks that you just washed it because that's not, we already said you can hang it in a place that doesn't give off the impression that you actually did a washing, because that was the concern. Did you do a washing? But he says, so there it's no problem. He says, but what we would even say is you could hang it on a clothesline, because people won't say that on that, so on that, everyone knows you didn't wash it. You're just hanging that one item in order for it to dry out a little quicker, because that's something that people use pretty frequently. Again, we don't use it that much, and we don't use it that often. I think that the best thing is for hand towels and the like, is to just hang them in the places that we normally hang them, on a rack in the kitchen or in the bathroom or something like that, and that is fine. Okay, what about taking it off? Right, so he says, "Kibasim shekapsu be'erev Shabbat, v'chein chitulim she'ar b'dek tanim shekapsu be'erev Shabbat, afilu hayu retuvim k'tzat v'ben hashmashot ba'ofen sheyesh behem tofeach al piach, mutar lahotzi'am ma'al hachevel b'Shabbat." If you hung something from before Shabbat, are you allowed to now take it off the string and to be able to use it? And the answer is yes. We don't say about these things, we didn't really get to the laws of Muktzeh, we don't say about these things, since they were hanging, you can't use them. Since they were not ready from before Shabbat, you may not use it on Shabbat. We say it's okay, even if it was hanging from before Shabbat, and now it's only on Shabbat that I'm taking it off, I am allowed to do that. So if I have a towel, underwear, a shirt, or something like that I need on Shabbat, and we had it drying from before Shabbat, I am allowed to pull it off the hook and to use it. What about the clips themselves? There are the clips that they put on. They're called whatever they're called. You know what they're called? The clips that we use to hang the clothing. They are muktzeh. Those clips are muktzeh. But they are of the category of kli shemelachto le'isur, which we didn't talk about yet, but we will. Mutar letaltalam etzorch gufam shel hamadakim kidei leishtamesh bahem letzorch mekomam kigon leishtamesh bahem letzorch tzidat kebasim v'hu balo yidam Shabbat. He says you can't use them in order to hang clothing, but you can touch them and actually pick them up in order to take something else off the string, because you're using it for, there's a rule that you're allowed to use it for another permissible purpose. So in this instance, there are permissible purposes. So you're allowed to use these anything other than drying the clothing. One last halacha. Let's say I've hung my clothing out to dry, and I see that it's starting to rain, or it's going to rain in a little bit. So certainly you are able to bring them in from the outside on Shabbat, even assuming there's an eruv and there's no problem of eruv, because even if you're not going to use this article of clothing on Shabbat, but you don't want it to get ruined, right? So let's say I left my shirt outside that I know I'm not wearing it today. I'm not going to wear it till Sunday. But I see it's going to start to rain, so that shirt not get ruined, I'm allowed to go outside and go get it. So that's the halacha for today. Tomorrow, we're going to start a really interesting set of halachot, which is tying and untying things, shoelaces, ties, belts, and so on and so forth. This is a major area in halacha. The question of tying and untying, that's going to be our topic for tomorrow. If anyone has any questions, feel free, but that's it for today.
Yeah. Rabbi, is the isur to hang up laundry to dry? Like if I lay it out on a chair, or your shirt got wet and you lay it down on a chair?
So it's only as we hang it in a way that people look and say, oh, you just did the wash. So to hang it on a chair, unless you do something that shows that that's what you did, but basically they don't. So to hang it on the back of a chair, on a doorknob, or even a hook that's used for other purposes, as we said, all that would be allowed.
Okay, thank you. Zaku Baruch.
Okay. Have a great day, everybody. See you at 10:45, hopefully.
Great.